Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Accelerating Cloud Adoption, focused on the public sector. So my name is Steve Blanche. I'm the CTO here in Ergo, and basically this is our agenda for the day. We are going to be looking at cloud strategies and migration planning, and then we're going to look at, I suppose, one of the biggest technologies, Microsoft technologies, that has really taken off, probably due to the COVID-19 crisis, is the collaborating and communication with Microsoft Teams. After that, we're going to look at making the case for Windows Virtual Desktop. Relatively new, went general release back in November, but has really taken off in terms of adoption. We are rolling out Windows Virtual Desktop to significant numbers of customers at the moment. And then with any cloud adoption, migration, so forth, security and governance are a critical piece. So the guys are going to walk us through the things to be aware of, the security and governance services available, how they should be done, and so on. And then the same is going to be applied then for cost management. So obviously cloud, being a pay-as-you-go service, could quickly ramp up to be expensive on a monthly basis unless that is properly monitored and governed. And Kevin Greene will be walking us through how we do that effectively. And then license to move, essentially we've got to look at maximizing your licensing subscription costs and how to position you to accelerate your cloud journey. And lastly, I'll do a summary and key takeaways that we need to look at in order to, I suppose, progress what we're doing. So I just want to kick off with government policy on cloud and cloud adoption. So this notice was published by the Office of the CIO, Cloud Computing Advice Note. And essentially, it just sets out the position from government on cloud strategy and cloud adoption, which basically says that the government direction is identify what systems are suitable to move to the cloud and then move them to the cloud. I'm not going to read out the definition, you can see it there yourselves, but it's basically just setting out a very clear strategy that cloud first is the strategy that the government wants all departments to now adopt. So taking that on board, how do we migrate to the cloud and what typically happens? And once a trigger like that decision from the CIO, the government CIO, has been announced, or some other trigger is kicked in to adopt cloud, then where do you start and how can we help? And these are the areas that are the most common starting points that we see, and probably in order of priority from left to right as well. Migrate, which is lift and shift, so taking taking Hyper-V or VMware VMs and shifting them straight up into the cloud, or gaining more security is definitely massive investment from Microsoft into the Azure cloud services and Microsoft 365 and so on. Probably far more secure, to be honest, now than traditional on-prem data center environments. Nobody's got the level of investment that Microsoft has in investing in all the security services. And then you do gain things like high availability with availability sets in Azure, for example, and then platform services and software services like Microsoft 365 or platform services like Azure SQL, inbuilt high availability, inbuilt redundancy, and so forth, and in scaling, just one of the natural selling points of the cloud. Proximity. Probably less relevant to Ireland-focused businesses, but we have customers who have global presence, and where we can leverage the proximity of Azure data centers all over the world, we can get content closer to customers' various divisions or regions. Legacy services and applications, there'll be a few examples we'll bring up during the webinar of where this is relevant, but things like Server 2008, SQL 2008, and so on, gone out of support, moving them to Azure, they instantly come back into support at no extra cost from Microsoft. And then replatforming potential, as I say, things like moving SQL clusters, VMs, and so on. Probably not the smartest thing to do, just to move them straight across into Azure. Can be done and has been done. But generally, we're seeing that replatforming them to leverage Azure SQL as a platform is more cost effective, better resilience, and better performance in a lot of cases. New apps and services. So where organizations have a new service, and public sector or education sector, you might have new engagements you might want to advertise out to your customers. We've got educational people on the webinar today. So new services for students and so forth. How do you stand them up very quickly and easily done in the cloud? And then moving to adopting agile and DevOps models. So this is the way the industry is going. You know, we need to be far more agile in our release cadence. Technology changes at a massive rate. Even I was just talking to Gerry this morning about some new releases that have already happened in the last week around Windows Virtual Desktop. You know, that it's just rapidly changing so quickly on those new technologies that the old style of waterfall type engagements just isn't relevant anymore. And obviously dev and test is the other one there for the new apps and services. Very easy to spin up dev and test environments in Azure Cloud Services, and they'll be right-sized and can be spun down and so forth pretty instantly without ongoing cost, whereas traditionally you have to spin up, get physical tin to spin up VMs and storage and networking and so forth, and you've got to have made that investment even if you're not using it. So again, significant examples of advantages of cloud. Cloud economics, commercial management of moving to OpEx, predictable cost forecasting, operational alignment with business, technical costs. Those 3 points really speak to aligning IT and operational costs with business. So businesses are typically more commonly operate on an OpEx type basis. You've got demand and supply and so forth, and businesses, smart businesses, adapt their supplies and their engagement models and staff and so forth to meet the demand as the demand is there. And when demand decreases, the stock and staff and so forth tend to downsize. And when it increases and scales out, they upsize. So moving to an OpEx model and a cloud-based model just tends to align more with the business and support that model more, which then, you know, just I suppose makes it easier for us to make a business case typically for these for migration to the cloud. And lastly, then chargeback. Chargeback is a feature that's really leveraged well with cloud, where you can tag all of the different resources within a cloud tenancy subscription and align those resources back to the division or department that is actually consuming those resources. So you get accurate billing assignments for various subsections within the organization. Big advantage. And then some of the triggers that we see for moving to that, you know, those cloud strategies, and you can see 8 of them here. So 8 different triggers that tend to prompt or accelerate cloud strategy initiatives. The most common of which are the software end of support, urgent capacity needs, data center contract expirations, software and hardware refresh. They're probably the more common ones that we would see. I mean, the others are still there and they still crop up, but they're definitely, I suppose, the more well-known triggers that would initiate a cloud engagement. So, and I'm sure most of you would probably be aware of or have those situations occurring within your business. So once we get a trigger, we engage with the customer to help them develop that strategy and scope and set out the milestones for how we progress that journey with the customer. So the first thing we do is we help you identify those cloud migratable systems and workloads to help you start as to where we kick off. So we run discovery tools which give us an analysis and a reconciliation of what you have in the environment and potentially how migratable all those workloads you currently have are to move to the cloud. And obviously identifies the gaps where particular workloads may not be suitable or compatible for cloud migrations. Once we run that, we come out with a final assessment report, which will have recommendations things like potentially don't lift and shift a VM, potentially re-platform it to Azure SQL as an example. But there'll be advisories and recommendations along with an action plan of how that migration should be implemented to leverage the best value out of the cloud and to address the challenges that exist within the organization, such as those triggers I mentioned earlier, any of those end of support or capacity requirements and so on. And then we move into the actual migration. So migrating the solution to the agreed design and estimated costs. So once we have all that scoped out and mapped, then and the customer then accepts that, so reviews it, and we make the case with the business, then we start to move into the engagement of actually deploying and moving the workloads up into Azure. And we do that in a collaborative way with the customer. So you'll have stakeholders involved with our project teams, obviously, that we need to work together in order to move those workloads and take advantage of maintenance windows and service migrations and so forth to do the actual implementation and migrations. And again, at the end of that, typically what we do is we will deliver a skills transfer and upskill your internal IT team on how to work, maintain, and operate cloud services on an ongoing basis. Because that will include the consumption monitoring to ensure that cloud economics are being managed and governed effectively. Because, like I said, cloud can get very expensive if you don't have those governance protocols in place. So we impart that as part of the training and upskilling handover that we do at the end of any cloud migration project. So in those assessments, that initial piece at the beginning, what are we looking at? So we're looking at what you can migrate, obviously. So typical workloads would be, typical first workloads are obviously things like SaaS, so Microsoft 365, Exchange Online, SharePoint, Teams, so on. Very common, typically very easy to do, and they would typically follow standard migration patterns in terms of technical implementation, but we would also usually have business change and user adoption team that engages with the customer on getting those new services up and running. And that's critical because they are new ways of working, new ways of doing things. So having that business change, user adoption team, we found to be one of the most successful factors in delivering those services. Am I safe? Obviously, security, like I said, you're moving to at least a hybrid cloud, if not a full public cloud, then security has to be architected into every aspect of the solution. How do I move? So the infrastructure optimization again. So their assessments give us the evidence-based data to construct that design plan, that migration plan of moving from your existing environment into cloud services. Cloud economics and contract optimization again. So always got to look at cost with cloud. Moving to OpEx model. We're obviously moving to monthly billing, forecasting and invoicing. So we've got to ensure that we maintain the governance and have clarity on how we forecast that from the outset. And then, speaking about cost, so as a Microsoft partner, our focus is the Azure cloud, and the reasons for that is we find that it is cost effective. So AWS is typically 5 times more expensive, obviously for Microsoft workloads especially. So the examples there, Windows Server on the right, you can see the bar in blue are the Azure costs, with the savings being the Azure hybrid benefit savings and the extended security update savings. So where they're potential savings, right? So where you've got existing server or Microsoft application licensing, you can bring that licensing to the cloud and use that licensing in Azure. And where you've got legacy workloads such as Server 2008, SQL 2008, and so on, even Windows 7, the extended security updates that you then get being in Azure are free of charge. Whereas obviously you see the example below with AWS, you have to pay for all of that. So significant savings over AWS. And the same applies for the SQL Server illustration just below that, small bar for the Azure expense, but compared with the AWS cost of moving SQL, significantly more. So hopefully that gives you an idea, an overview of how we engage and help customers address cloud strategy and thinking about how do they migrate, what should they migrate first, how do they present that back to the business. These are all the things that we help customers achieve, establishing those business cases, the technical cases, the actual migration plans, and then walking them through and upskilling them on being able to delivering it. Okay, so one of the areas, the technology areas that's, as I say, it's been a massive success for Microsoft is Microsoft 365 and especially Microsoft Teams. So Prasanna is going to walk us through a demonstration and a good overview of Microsoft Teams. So Prasanna, over to you, take it away.
Thanks, Steve. That was a good one. And hi, everybody. Very good afternoon. Myself, Prasanna. I'm part of Modern Workplace team, Ergo. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through the overview of Teams and how to use it and what are the cool features which comes with Team. If you're not familiar with what is Team, to short, Team is a hub of teamwork wherein you can collaborate and communicate effectively with your team members from a single and a safe, secure location. And the second thing which I would like to highlight about Team is really customizable application. You can have a set of teams, workspaces. They are also called as workspaces, channels, etc., which I'm going to deep dive in the demo session. So I'll leave it for that now. And as I said, not only with the collaboration customization, it also leverages you to add applications, maybe familiar Office 365 applications or your line of business applications or any kind of third-party applications. You can integrate and access from a single point. That's your Team. So Team is not just a communicator application or a video calling application, screen sharing, etc. Whatever comes with your native link, link, Skype, etc. It's totally a workspace. So we're going to deep dive into it. And before moving to the demo, I would like to quickly give an overview of usage of Teams. Currently, the recent announcement by Microsoft says that there are 75 million active users currently using Teams and adding 31 million over the last month. I know there are various reasons contributed for it, but Teams is really an adaptive solution which everybody can enable, and that user adaptation is really easy and it gives you a complete remote solution. So let's change the gear and let's get started with our demo so we can see everything in real in action. Okay, so I'm on my VM machine. So if you're not familiar with how the desktop version of Teams looks like, so currently I'm accessing it in my desktop version. So this is how it looks, and Teams also has your web version, which I will give you an overview and look and feel of it. So to quickly talk about the features and how effectively use Teams. Ideally, if as an user, like I start my day looking at the activity tab. And next I will switch to the chat tab and Teams, calendars, calls, files, and the eclipses here give you option to integrate with other applications, planner, shifts. I'm going to talk more about it in this demo. So ideally, I start my day looking at the activity tab. So it's not just the activity tab. You can plan your day's activity and to-do list based on this particular tab. So if you want to really filter out, just for instance, I want to see somebody who mentioned me and have given some actions for me, so I can plan my day. I just go at the filter and filter this. So there are my colleagues who mentioned something for me. They're asking me to review a document, etc. So I can quickly pick up all my to-do lists from here. Next, let me go to the search window. If you're already having an experience on how the link and everything works, you normally use this for searching users, for having a communication. But Teams is different. It's not just just a search window to locate a user. Instead, you can use these handy commands. So for instance, if I want to chat with somebody, I don't want to navigate and try to find him line by line. I can just go ahead and if, for instance, I want to chat with my colleague, say I want to say wish him good morning, whatever. I just pick him, and by a single click, the email can be delivered, and nothing limited to it. If you look at this, the message is already sent to him, and not only limited to that, you can even navigate to your Teams which I'm going to talk about what is teams, etc. So you can just figure out the teams which you are part of it. You can just navigate right away to the specific team. You don't want to go line by line searching of it. So with that being said, let me quickly jump onto your chat window. So this is your rich chat-based experience which you have with your predators like your link, Skype, etc. So you can call your colleagues. You can have a screen sharing session. You can add a users, and you can have a multi-part sharing, and you can do everything which you normally do with your existing link or Skype solution. And let's quickly navigate to these tabs and see, let you know what they are. So basically, these files, these are this particular tab lists all the files which you shared with the specific user. It will be listed over here, and you can go to the organization chart to see where he sits in the organization, who is his managers, etc. And for the activity, for this specific person, you want to see if he already reviewed any part of document or if you updated any channel or teams, you can quickly go to the activity tab and you can have a quick look of it. Nothing, it doesn't stop here. If you click on this plus symbol, that allows you to add all your familiar Office applications, and you can add your third-party applications, and even you can add your websites, which doesn't come in an application format. So that's easy and a straightforward thing to do with Teams. And let me quickly go to the Teams tab, where all the collaboration magic happens here. So normally this Teams, where the name derived, this product name derived from. So if you look at this, there are multiple workspaces or teams. We call this as teams are nothing but a group of channels. It consists of a group of channels. If you ask me what is this channel, channel is nothing but a discussion with a set of people on a specific topic. The topic may be your project related, or maybe your personal thing, or it can be anything, any financial discussions. You can have a separate channels to discuss on a specific topic with a specific set of people who are involved in it. And not with that, as I said, you can have the file sharing capabilities. If you look at here, we have a couple of files here. So with the native SharePoint feature, you can do a co-authoring here. So if you want to get into a file, you want to complete the document collaboratively with your team members, so you can straight away do here. You can, other team member on the other side can access this Teams client and go to the same document. You start editing and get into the call and complete the document. It's really straightforward. And here comes your wiki, OneNote wiki, as normal OneNote thing. You can take all your notes, etc. And even Teams has option to integrate with the third-party applications. You can integrate your Power BI dashboards. You can integrate your planner, whatnot. You can integrate each and every applications which are available. There are a good set of applications available, and even you can use your line of business applications and integrate with Teams, and you can access from a single workspace. And there are two types of channels. So I right now I spoke about the general channels which are accessible to everybody part of this particular team. So I'm part of these all teams and I can access all these channels. There are certain things like if you want, in every business there might be some reason you want to have a set of people and you want to discuss the confidential information or financial information with only those set of people, and you don't want those data to be accessed by anybody outside that specific group. So you can use this private channel. These private channels are meant for that, and you can look at the private channel. You can easily differentiate it. There may be a lock option. There will be a lock option just next to the private channel. Basically, if we talk about the backend of Teams, it's an Office 365 group, which is now been renamed as Microsoft 365 groups. Each Teams here comes with a SharePoint site, and all these documents you share here are actually uploaded to your SharePoint. You don't want to manually do that. It automatically, the application does that, and user don't need to navigate from Teams to access their document. They can access all the documents here. And to talk about the private channels, this actually logically separates the document which you shared with the general channels. What I mean, if anybody part of this Teams can access all the general files which are available with the normal channels, but not with the private channels. Only the members part of this private channel can access them. So let's get on to the calendaring feature here. It's similar to the Outlook one. Whatever calendaring or any meeting you schedule here is integrated or synced with your Outlook. You can have a meeting or a meet now option straight away by a click, and you can schedule your online meetings, and you can even have a live meeting section. The current meeting which we are presenting right now is a live meeting. This allows you to add up to 10,000 users. You can have a 10,000 audience part of this live meeting. And with the calendaring option, Microsoft recently said released that 49 people can be seen in a single screen. What I mean to say is you can have a video call with 49 people with a single screen. And let's get on to the calls feature here. So if you have your PSTN integrated with Teams, that eliminates your local hardware telephony systems. You can get your dial plans, and you can just call anybody, one-to-one call, or anybody from external, etc., from this particular key. And next, go to the Files tab. This actually makes your job really easy if you're continuously working on any specific document, and you want to be in your personal OneDrive. You can actually download this to your personal OneDrive, etc. From there, these all can be controlled as per the organization's requirement, basically. And let me quickly go ahead and show you how the web experience of Teams looks like. So if you look at this, this is a web version of Teams. If you don't find any difference between your desktop, except there is some technical limitations in the backend. Other than that, the look and feel of web application will be similar to your desktop version. So I'll quickly go through certain options. I can show you what other features Teams has. If you have a diversified team sitting across the globe and they are having some barrier with communication, they don't know English and they are comfortable with their own language. For instance, if you look at this particular chat, there's a friend of mine working from Dubai and he's using Arabic. Teams allows me to translate it so I can get to know what he's trying to say and I can respond to them. That's easy. This Teams currently supports around 55 languages, and it's really easy and it breaks the barrier. And other one fun thing which I love about Teams and I personally use more is making your work a little bit more fun. So you can use the GIFs here on your chats, etc. And also you can use your stickers. This stickers is like memes. You can even edit these memes basically based on a scenario, and you can have a real fun at work. Other than that, to talk about the control and governance point of view, Teams is, as you know, Teams is part of the Office 365 suite. And this has all the capabilities which other workloads has, like your Exchange, etc. You can apply your Azure Information Protection policies. You can assign your Dlp policies. I will show you quickly about a demo on the Dlp policy. If you look at this chat here, I have a Dlp policy for a custom word Fuber. So that's actually, I've configured it to block it, basically. Sorry, that's sensed. If you look at this, this is to prevent users sharing confidential information as like your credit card numbers or your PPS number or any confidential information. There is a set of sensitive data types are available in Microsoft 365, which you can use and leverage for Teams. And last but not least, I would like to cover the interesting part here. As I said, Teams is a highly customizable application. This particular theme is different from the other ones which you see on the top. This theme is basically, we have created this for one of our customers. So we can customize themes based on your organization's requirement. They need the naming standards here, so it should be a department project or whatever the way they want it, and they are not manually created. And if you say this is an IT department, this is actually powered by Graph API and your Azure Automation, and there's an application being delivered to the customer. So only the IT admins who have access to this particular applications can create these themes, and that's been covered. I mean, they have a complete control of Teams, and they know who can create teams in their organization and what actions they can do. And this particular channel, they wanted us to block the file sharing option. So if you look at here, the file sharing, there is no files because that particular option is blocked. And I can go in here. You won't have an option to select the file, etc. So that's there. And if you look at this channel, we can't add the members. It right away says that this is restricted. So we can do whatever customization you need for your environment, and you can roll it out in a face-to-face manner. You can use it as a first step. You can use the web version of Teams. You can deploy for pilot users and see how the adaptation goes, and then you can move on to the desktop version, etc. That being said, I would like to share a success story with our recent deployment of Teams for the Department of Health Ireland. So when the COVID happened, and Department of Health want to enable remote access, remote work for their employees, and they chose Ergo as their Teams deployment vendor, or the company who can effectively deploy Teams for them. So we had challenges in deploying Teams with them because they were using very legacy technologies like Locust, Domino, etc. So it was a pandemic situation, as everybody knows, and to address the crisis and take off the stress out of them, we actually started with our Microsoft Rapid Enablement and Adaptation program. What it does is, so it's customized the need of the customer, and we developed the tool to deploy it. And parallelly, while working on Teams deployment, we spin up an Exchange server and set up a hybrid, etc. The work actually started on Friday, and within 2 days, Monday, we were able to enable Teams for the complete organization. And a success of a product is not just by enabling it. It's an important point that's user adaptation. So we have our set of teams, and we developed our training portal with all your FNQ, and we delivered 6 webinars for 200 users in a short span of time. And you believe me, the director of departmental was so impressed with the way we deployed Teams effectively. And the usage of Team was tremendous, which we never expected. It was around like 3,000, 5,000 chats within a week, and 130 conference calls, or around 600 one-to-one conference calls. It was a real relief for the customer. So that's a really interesting success story, which I thought I would share with you guys. And thanks for this. I will hand over the session to Gerry, who's going to talk about the Windows Virtual Desktop.
Thanks, Prasanna. That was a really good overview of Teams. So, as Steve said, we're seeing that organizations are looking to provide access to corporate resources, especially in the current pandemic environment. People are working remotely, and we're seeing Windows Virtual Desktop as the solution for this. Organizations need to do this securely, and WVD leverages the capability and power of both Azure and Microsoft 365 in Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, through Microsoft 365, we can enable MFA and enforce it through conditional access rules. Now, also remember that WVD virtual machines must be traditionally AD joined, but this is supported by Azure AD Authentication. It's very competitively priced. It can actually save us money. We're going to see some details on that shortly. And organizations can scale up and down quickly as the business requires it. So we're currently in discussion with a number of county councils to deploy proof of concept of Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, the first economic benefit for the infrastructure is that you can have a Windows 10 experience at multi-session cost. Now, with today's VDI solutions, you normally have to go with either a Windows Server remote desktop solution, which compromises on the user experience because you get a Windows 10, or sorry, a Windows Server experience, or you can use a Windows 10 single session, which compromises on cost. But with Windows Virtual Desktop, you can get both. On the left there, for a single session deployment, you need one small VM per user, which actually ends up with a low utilization. In comparison, for a multi-session deployment, you can have a larger shared VM to support multiple users, so you can have a higher utilization. And obviously then, since you have fewer VMs, you can expect lower operational costs and massive savings. And this is the key differentiation of Windows Virtual Desktop. No other solution in the marketplace can support Windows 10 multi-session. And this is another way to save money. By migrating your Windows 7 workloads to WVD, you get extended updates for the next 3 years for free. Now, the cost of Windows 7 extended updates is quite high, and it arrives next year and the following year. You can see in 2022, you'll expect to pay $200 per device for a Windows 7 Pro machine. So with Windows 7 Virtual Desktop, you don't have to pay that, and there are massive savings as a result. Now, this is the architecture of Windows Virtual Desktop, you can see the roles that traditionally we would have to manage on-prem, the web browser, broker, diagnostics. You do not have to manage anymore. They're managed as a platform as a service offering from Microsoft. The only thing we need to do is to provide a connectivity back to our on-premise domain for our resources. Microsoft provide all the stuff that we used to configure in order to set up a remote desktop solution, and we and the customer can configure the operating system, profiles, and applications and policies that are needed. So Windows Virtual Desktop then provides some cutting-edge technologies to make a first-class user experience. So if you remember when we used to use roaming profiles, I've always hated them. They just grow in size and out of control. And when a user logs in, the entire profile is copied from a central location to the desktop, which takes ages. It's a very poor experience. So FS Logics is designed to provide similar functionality in remote computing environments. The profile is stored in an FS Logics container, which is in the format of a VHD or VHDX file. And when the user signs into the virtual machine in the host pool, the VHD is dynamically attached to the virtual machine, and no data is actually copied. So the performance is first class. And FS Logics has been the industry leader in this space for quite some time. Microsoft have now purchased FS Logics, so this technology is now available for free in Windows Virtual Desktop. Also, we see that apps can be separate. So MSIX attach means that we can do the same with applications. MSIX is the latest Microsoft file format for applications. And with Windows Virtual Desktop, we can attach the apps to the host pool VMs as VHD files. And all of this keeps the operating system free from data and applications and makes it highly performant. Now, next we have Aperture, and that's the last thing before we see some demo. This is part of Microsoft's Fast Track program. It's Microsoft's application compatibility promise. They guarantee that if you have an app running on a physical device or another VDI environment, then it will work with Windows Virtual Desktop. And if you experience an issue, then Microsoft will help you remediate it for free. Now that is a great offering from Microsoft. So now I just want to have a look at some cool stuff. So we're going to start by looking at the Windows Virtual Desktop environment. So these are all the Windows Virtual Desktop resources. You can see some remote apps that have been published to me. This is some examples that I've created. And this is, so sign in here. This is WordPad, which is just running as a remote app. This is not actually running on my machine. So remote app is very useful, delivering streaming applications to remote clients. It's great for hot desk environments where users don't have assigned computers, so you don't need to worry about their apps. And it's also good for when you need multiple versions of an app on a machine, because obviously multiple versions will cause conflicts. And this then is our Windows 10 desktop host pool. Now, if we had a requirement for Windows 7, we would have a separate host pool for that. So let's just sign into the desktop. So it's got automatic resizing. So if I resize my the browser screen, it actually resizes the desktop at the same time. And you can see that when the browser is in full screen mode, it looks really no different than a regular Windows 10 desktop. So within the desktop, here we see Teams. We use that as our collaboration tool, as Prasanna showed. I have shortcuts on my desktop to internal services, and these are files that is a network share back to our on-premise. These are files I haven't synced with OneDrive. And then this is one of the applications that we haven't published externally. This is our financial application, NAV. This is the only way we can actually access NAV in the organization through Windows Virtual Desktop. And this is what we're configured in the registry. This is the FS Logics I was talking about, where we've configured where the VHD, where the profiles will sit. Now, if we look at the profiles, here's my profile, and it's simply just a VHD file that's attached to my VM. And we secure these the profile with NTFS permissions the same way that we would do for home drives. You can see that I can get into mine, but despite all the trying I've done, I still can't get into Steve's. So that's unfortunate. Okay, now I just want to show you a couple of cool things also about FS Logics before I pass you back to Prasanna. It includes some additional functionality called app masking and Java rules. So why would you use app masking? So app masking is for hiding certain applications in a host pool from specific users. So let's say we want the finance users to see the finance app, but nobody else should be able to see it. Now, without FS Logics, we'd have to deploy 2 different host pools to get around this. But all I have to do now is to hide the app, and we can use the same host pool. So we can see I've installed the FS Logics rule editor and the agent here. So you can see Adobe Reader and Chrome on there. So I'm going to create a simple rule to hide. Chrome is done to hide Reader as well. So if I go to new, give it a name, we call it Adobe. And then all we need to do is to choose the program. Scan, it's all the information about the program, registry settings, installer directories, and if we go OK. Now we need to say to create an assignment. So I'm going to say that this rule set to hide everything applies to everybody on this machine. And we'll go OK. Now what's that's done is that has created these rule files. So all we need to do is to copy these files. You can do this with your favorite management tool, and you copy these into the rules folder, and you will see that the applications are now hidden. So that's really, really cool. I need to get a full screen here. So now if we look at Java, very quickly look at Java. So Java can be a nuisance. So we can install multiple versions of Java in a host pool, but different applications need different versions of Java. Now we can do that with this rule editor. So we just go to create a different version of Java. I can say that app1 needs to use version 1.6, and I could create the same for app2. You can just use 1.8. So it's really cool to control the versions of Java. So that is it for me. I hope you find that tool very useful. And now Prasanna will be speaking about identity and Azure authentication.
Thanks, Gerry. That was a good one. Hi, everybody. This is Prasanna again. And as part of this session, I'm going to talk about the identity and how you can secure the identity and what are the methods available in Azure to secure your identity. Hope everybody agree to me, the time has changed. And with all this digital transformation happening, you are allowing your users to access your resources from different locations, from different devices, and there are users accessing multiple applications. So there is no more firewall or there is no VPN to secure your resources. So you need to think, and this is the right time to think and focus on securing your identity. There shouldn't be any trust on any signal that's coming on your cloud platforms. So all the signals needs to be verified before allowing them to access the resources. So that talks about the security authentication. And again, how we can do this. Microsoft by default has the artificial intelligence and machine learning. So if a cloud user is accessing a resource, it tracks all the behavior of that user, and the artificial intelligence engine and the machine learning, they know who you are, which applications you frequently access, and which IP address you access, and what is your OS type, and which devices you frequently use and access. So they have a complete track of you, and there is any deviation with that, it will automatically block it. For that, you need to little bit tweak your infrastructure to react to that. So first thing, if you want to secure your identity, the first piece you need to look for any organization or any customer, we recommend them to use the multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, as its name sounds, it's a two-factor authentication. So you use your native mobile applications or Microsoft Authenticator app to authenticate and authorize using the push notification, which is in your mobile device, and you say approve, that's fine, and you enter your passwords, etc. That works there. But the recent study from Microsoft proves that 82% of cyber attacks are due to the stolen, weak, and repetitive passwords. And if you allow the customers to access their data from different locations, they tend to save their passwords or use the repetitive passwords or default passwords, which is easily guessable by the bad guys or the cyber criminals. And sometimes they even go smart and the users put their sticky passwords because the passwords are really hard to remember. So users really hate the passwords. But the hackers love that because they have a set of default passwords each and every day. They will be trying that against your identity and try to impersonate you and try to gain access to the resources. So you need to stop that. And for that, you can use the multi-factor authentication. But implementing multi-factor authentication doesn't really, so it's a strong authentication, though we agree to it, but it's even susceptible for certain kind of man in the middle attack or phishing emails. They can even bypass that and access your environment or the resource to. So the identity is a key control plane which you need to secure your resources. And for that, you need to look forward for the passwordless authentication journey. And I'm going to talk about the methods of passwordless authentication down the lines in my demo. And let's go to the conditional access. Conditional access are nothing but, as I said, with the artificial intelligence and machine learning, it knows what is your behavior. If there is any changes, you can integrate it with a lot of other components of Microsoft's, and you can block it based on the application level, or you can location-wise. If, for instance, if you don't want to allow users from accessing your corporate network, you can block that. And I'm going to talk about the conditional access as well. And last comes your identity protection. As I said, identity protection is the key. How are we going to do that? There are two default policies available. One is risky user sign-in policy and sign-in risk. And what is risky user sign-in policy is if your credential is compromised, the hackers will try to sell that in your black web. And Microsoft Intelligence Engine or Threat Intelligence automatically sense that, and they know that this particular account is compromised, and they have a default set of policies which can even stop the issues, stop the breach before it occurs. So that's there. And the risky sign-ins are nothing but there is like kind of an example. There is an impossible travel. For example, if you're accessing it from Dublin and within 10 to 15 minutes you access it from Galway, so that's something which is impossible. So there are other properties which you can tweak around the Azure Identity Protection module on your Azure tenant or in Office 365, and you can enforce it more relatively. Let me quickly jump onto the next slide, which talks more about the authentication method to start your passwordless journey. So there are three ways you can go passwordless. One is your Windows Hello for Business, and Microsoft Authenticator is very well known, and I think most of you guys are already using Microsoft Authenticator. And next is your Fido security key. So start with my Windows Hello for Business. Windows Hello for Business is basically you are authenticating, users are authenticating to their devices, Windows 10 devices, using biometric gesture, maybe a face recognition or a fingerprint. It's straightforward. Even they can use their PIN, but it's recommended to use these things, and the component should have IR cameras and your fingerprint sensors. And if that should be a static Windows desktop for your user, that will be really good. And the solution is seamless, simple, and fast. And next comes your Microsoft Authenticator, which is more familiar. I know a lot of you guys are using multi-factor authenticator. By a single click, you can enable phone sign-in, which will actually make you to log in without passwordless. So this is a easy and adaptable solution for the second one. And last one is your FIDO2 security keys. To talk about FIDO2 security keys, they basically developed by Fido Alliance based on a standards-based authentication model, which actually the intention is to allow users to access web applications or web services using go passwordless. It works basically on two common protocols, which is your WebAuthn and your CTAP protocols. They have been used for that. Normally, the FIDO2 security keys or hardware tokens, where you can use the hardware tokens to plug into your device, and you can use your biometrics, or even there are a lot of options for customers to use. You can use your biometric fingerprints, or you can use your wearables. Even you take a ring and place it there, and that will enable you to log into the device. So it's that easy. And one basic thing about all these passwordless authentication solutions is it works on the private and public key model. So the private key stays on your device, so there is no credential sharing. Your identities or your fingerprints are never shared with Azure AD or something. Azure AD uses the public key to decrypt your private key, and that's the process how it works. So there is no kind of credential sharing. They can't use your fingerprints, etc., for any other purpose other than that. And Microsoft is also working with various key vendors like Ubico and Fatinet and HID Global to have different options and different innovative solutions to improve this Fido key model, basically. That's being said, I will go to the next slide. This is the conditional access piece. As I said, conditional access blocks a lot of things. As I said, it can be triggered basically based on your user entity for a specific user or a group of users based on the location. And even if certain customers, we have seen they don't want users to use their personal devices, so that will enforce the personal devices, any mobile device, or bring your own device identity to register with Intune solutions once they're managed by your environment, and then they will allow the access to those devices. So it's completely blocking the solution. And the other thing is your applications. You can use all your cloud applications with conditional access or a set of applications. And next one, as I said, there is a risky sign-in, the identity risky sign-in model. You can even integrate with the cloud conditional access. So based on the risk level, low, medium, or high, you can take appropriate actions on that. And as part of this session, I would really like to emphasize, if you are looking to use the conditional access to the course, you first start with disabling your basic legacy authentication, because the hackers use the tools which are powered for basic authentication, which is your legacy authentication, which doesn't obey or adhere to the modern authentication model. So, and it's really risky to enable basic authentication. So start with the conditional access blocking from your basic authentication protocols like your POP3, IMAP, etc. So you can start with that model. And that's all for me for now, and I'll hand over this to Kevin to take it over. So Kevin will be talking to you regarding the governance of Azure resources. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Prasanna. A really good presentation. So welcome everyone. Thanks so much for staying online and joining our presentation. And for anybody else who's reviewing this presentation offline at a later stage, welcome as well. So my name is Kevin Greene. I'm the Azure team lead in Ergo, and I'm just going to talk to you folks about some of the things that you should be thinking of when you deploy an Azure environment for your organization. So we talk about things like governance, and governance in Azure is built underpinning, if you like, from a bunch of best practice recommendations and guidelines that Microsoft have put together over the years since Azure became a mature platform. And they've released a framework called the Cloud Adoption Framework. From the Cloud Adoption Framework, we work with our customers to strategize and to plan how they should work or how they should get those workloads up into the cloud. You know, in not every scenario, it's going to be feasible to migrate a workload up. In some cases, it might just be more economical, or from a supportability perspective, it might be defined that that workload needs to stay on premises. So either way, as part of the strategy and the planning phases, we'll work with you and your business to ensure that the right workloads are brought up to the cloud. We'll run some assessments, so we'll use tools like Azure Migrate, Cloudimize, any of these cloud assessment and optimization tools to analyze what you've got on-prem, ensure that they are actually compatible. So if you're running them on VMware or Hyper-V, or if you've got older legacy versions of Windows or cross-platform operating systems, the assessment phase will ensure that those workloads are actually supported to run in the cloud. We'll then work with the various teams on the ground and across your business units to migrate those workloads. And in some cases, we'll modernize or we'll innovate with the teams to maybe take a web application, for example, or a database platform that's running on your typical kind of legacy IaaS or inside a virtual machine scenario, and we'll look to modernize that application to bring it up into the cloud as something like a platform as a service or a PaaS workload. And recently, Ergo have been awarded an Azure Migration Partner Specialist in the application modernization space. So this is something that we're really proud of. I think we do really well, and it's not always the right job just to migrate a workload as is. So do keep that in mind when you're thinking about working with cloud platforms. Governance, of course, we mentioned it a few minutes ago, super important. So when you have your workloads up in the cloud, you need to ensure that you can control them. You've got centralized role-based access control, policy, ensuring people can't spin workloads up in different regions, ensuring maybe, for example, high-end or high specification virtual machines or database platforms cannot be deployed without you or your business knowing about it. All those type of things fall into the governance part of our cloud adoption framework engagement. And then, of course, management. So once you've got the workloads up and you've got them governed, you need to manage them. So you need to monitor the workloads to ensure that they're available, they're performing as they should do for you and your end users. You will need to back them up. You'll need to possibly store your secrets in something like Azure Key Vault, even disaster recovery. So you can use a service like Azure Site Recovery to replicate your workloads out of, say, the North Europe data center, which is in Dublin, over to the West Europe data center in Amsterdam. So there's plenty of different options. And when you engage with us on the cloud adoption framework for Azure, you will be brought through each of these phases one by one as part of our consultative engagement. If you want to learn a little bit more about the CAF, we've dropped a tiny URL link down the bottom there, and you can happily read through 900 plus pages of this work, of this particular framework.
Kev, I'm going to have to step in that we are running way over time. If you could just skip through, show the slides around security, and it's something that we can engage with anybody who's further interested. But just conscious we're trying to squeeze an awful lot into essentially an hour now at this stage. So if you could move past the security pieces, just show that there are slides there and we can engage. Go on to the cost. Apologies, but we just have to cut it short a bit because we're just so far over time.
Absolutely no problem, Steve. So yeah, absolutely, security, super important. We can have all areas of Azure managed from a security perspective. Here we're talking about Azure Sentinel, a new SIEM product. We've got our security operations team that are more than happy to engage with you and your business with this. And cost management. So most people have heard of Azure cost management as this kind of hidden feature that, you know, hopefully can save you and your business a lot of money. So with Azure Cost Management, we can ensure that you monitor your cloud spend, drive that organizational accountability, and of course, optimize those workloads across multiple different environments, not just Azure, so AWS and Google Cloud as well. And a final neat feature of Azure management or cost management that a lot of people are not aware of is Azure Budgets. So here we can get a notification coming from the Azure platform to you or your business units, notifying you when you're at like 50% or 60 or 75% of your agreed business budget for those particular cloud workloads. And from there, it can be something as simple as an email, or we can run some automation behind the scenes to actually shut down those workloads and forcefully ensure that they don't incur any additional costs. So with that, I'll hand over to my colleague Cormac, and he's going to talk a little bit about licensing. Over to you, Cormac.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for that whistle-stop tour. Yeah, look, name's Cormac Hayes. I work for Micromail. We're a fully owned subsidiary of the Ergo group. Or basically, our function in this channel is to really help customers to, I suppose, cut through the branding, which Microsoft is very strong on, and cut through the information to present really, you know, the licensing overheads that underpin the technologies that have been discussed so far. So I've been doing this role for about 15 years, and it gets more complicated as time goes on. But we work with customers across. I'm conscious there's people on different in different kinds of organizations attending, right? So there's educational, and there's government, and there's commercial. Fundamentally, all of the technologies are the same for our customers. What's different is the licensing models available and the pricing associated with the different types of customers. Okay, so as alluded to Prasanna earlier, Teams, for example, you know, is a really highly in demand product at the moment. The current COVID-19 crisis has driven interest and deployment to all new heights, but it's not new technology in some ways. So Teams as a product is part of your M365 suite. You'll have heard of it. Office 365 suites, you'll have heard of them. It's not actually available as a standalone product. So customers who are licensed for those suites will already have Teams. The Department of Health was mentioned earlier. They had Teams built into their enterprise agreement and were able to quickly roll that out, having the technology already licensed. Okay, but with all things with Microsoft, you know, there are the kind of out of the box licensing rights, and there are other add-ons that come along, right? So for example, if you want to build on the Teams platform to include things like audio conferencing, you're going to have to buy an add-on for that. Okay, that could cost, you know, in the commercial, I'll give commercial rates roughly speaking, RRPs, right, and there'll be less obviously for those in the educational space and so on, about €3.30, right, for audio conferencing per user per month. This will allow you to publish a dial-in capability for clients and external parties. Microsoft allow you to turn on a consumption credit, which effectively opens up your Teams solution to, you know, potentially extra costs, but also toll-free numbers and audio conferencing and queue attendance and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of different bolt-ons, right, which on the face of it you may or may not be aware of, right? Teams could be peer-to-peer, internally, IM presence, but it can also be externally facing for audio conferencing and a full-blown telephony solution. Microsoft are acting as a carrier on that front as well, and calling plans will have to be discussed. So I suppose at the root of this is understanding your licensing assets and getting the licensing conversation going as part of any solution consideration early days, so that it meets all of your requirements, because there are additional add-ons that need to be considered. Just briefly, Microsoft are actually running at the moment a trial for 6 months for up to 1,000 users. So for those of you who may be listening in who are considering Teams but don't have it licensed as part of an enterprise agreement or a campus agreement, please reach out if you want to begin that journey. Okay, that's something that's happening at the moment. Obviously, it won't last forever, but it's worth taking advantage of the opportunity that's there right now. Just quickly moving on to the Windows side. In a nutshell, as you can see on the left-hand side here, customers who have the M365 suites, student use benefit, again, that's for the educational customers attending, or Windows Enterprise license per user, you can utilize those on-premise licensing rights in the cloud to deliver the Windows Virtual Desktop and drive down cost. So one of there's a repeating pattern here in some of the conversations around solution, hybrid benefits, Microsoft building a cloud licensing solution that covers on-prem and the cloud, that can be leveraged on-premise, and some of this can drive savings in the cloud. For example, Windows Server with SA, it effectively grants users or customers an Azure hybrid benefit that can drive down your cost of running workloads in Azure. So it's possible that those things could be overlooked without some input from licensing people. So with the Windows Virtual Desktop, you're talking about two main components. There's the client licensing, and there's the computational power that's driving the images. So you're going to have Azure, and you're going to have Windows to make that solution possible. You can do an estimate on the Azure calculator for the computational part, but you saw from Gerry's presentation how the multi-tenant session is designed to drive down costs. Okay. So look, I mean, I'm conscious of the time, obviously, right? So please do reach out if there are other questions around your existing assets or considerations of future licensing needs. All right, Steve, I'll hand it back to you there at this point.
Lovely. Thanks, Cormac. So just to move it along, appreciate we have probably ran over significantly. So what are the key takeaways? So initially, build awareness from assessments. This gives us evidence-based analysis. So like I say, we come in, we run the tools to get detailed understanding of what your environment consists of, how it's constructed, what the caveats are, and so forth, to actually come up with a strategy, a cloud strategy, a design for migration, and cost modeling and forecasting for a cloud presence. And then anywhere. So what does that mean? Anywhere essentially is working collaboratively through Microsoft 365 and Teams, Windows Virtual Desktop. So again, when you need access to those critical applications that potentially aren't in the cloud, they're on-prem, they're your private applications, so forth. Windows Virtual Desktop gives you that fully governed, managed desktop, and all of those additional advantages that Gerry walked us through for that platform. Security, security, security. Yeah, got to repeat it. Got to focus on it. I know we skipped over it, and apologies to Kevin. We had to cut short time there, but it's embedded with everything we do in cloud services. And then how do we help? So enlist us to access our experience, our expertise. We've gone through the pain points. We've learned the easy way and the hard way of all the potential pitfalls and caveats that you need to be aware of. So by all means, use us. As we called out, we're fast track ready, and we're an Azure migration partner. We're the only fast track ready partner in Ireland currently. And important point is a lot of these assessments and engagement and so forth can be fully funded or at least partially funded. So may not even cost you anything. So very well worth exploring. And then lastly, in terms of the support, as I said, we do training and upskilling for IT teams on managing and governing these cloud estates, tenants, subscriptions, and so forth. And then we can also provide a fully outsourced model, or we simply augment your IT teams as escalation and so forth. So whatever way you want to work and need support. I just want to say that there is a free workload assessment, typically about 3 days work. So about 3,000 euros worth of offering here that we're giving away to people that complete the feedback form. Well, one lucky winner of everybody that completes the feedback form. You'll see it in the Q&A panel for the webinar. Please fill out the feedback form and we'll pick someone from that at random sometime tomorrow afternoon. So you have until midday tomorrow to complete the feedback form, if you could, please. It gives us good information on potentially what are good about webinars and potentially future webinars. And we also want to hopefully give something away where you get something out of it too. All right, that pretty much gives us, wraps us up, and apologies for going over time. These are the contact details that you can use to access us if you have an account manager here in Ergo, or you can email that email address or call that number. But we also will be issuing out the Q&A details for the questions and the answers that were posed during the webinar. Some of them most of them haven't been published as far as I'm aware yet, so we haven't got to them. Apologies, we ran out of time. But I'll leave it there. I'm sorry for, again, running over time, but hopefully you did find it interesting. Thanks again. That's all.